Hello and welcome to All Things Ayahuasca, where we explore plant medicine in depth with Michael Gueron. Today we are discussing what's the difference between a shaman and a therapist.
Hey everyone, how you going? Hi Anna.
Well, we have to start with what is a shaman? What is a shaman?
Well, shaman is it's a big word these days, isn't it? Oftentimes I have, I'll be honest, a bit of aversion from this word because there's a lot of connotations and things, and it's kind of like overinflated word in terms of what people think it is, and there's a lot of notions that intertwine with it, especially from the egoic perspective and the power and all that, and it's a bit of a problematic things, but we will use the word shaman for now, and we'll see we'll see where we're going with that. um, so yeah, shamans are those healers, the master healers that used to spread throughout the whole world, mostly in the more indigenous cultures, which most cultures are, let's be honest, in their original essence. And so we're looking at the medicine man, the shaman, the healer, the person who is a conduit for spirit and is the one that is the bridge between the worlds, is the one that uh, can bring messages from the other side into the community, is the person that holds the community together, that brings people together, that creates celebrations, that in the solstices and the equinoxes and the different auspicious days, the full moons, the dark moons, is the healer that bring messages from spirit, is the messages that hear if there is a message from the land, the energies of the land, and bring those very deep, profound messages to the community and to the villages, to the people around them, around him. That uh, it's something that everyone can do. Um, Maybe nowadays we're getting into that stage a bit more than what it used to be because of the levels of consciousness that rising on the planet. And so this is like the general wavelength of how what it is.
Yeah, I think, as you're talking, I'm thinking about books and movies and things, from my childhood or from my life, where it's been a very exotic, distant thing that I've only seen through something like that, through fiction or through story, where there's a shaman, one shaman in a village that's this old guy, usually, very revered, and he's got this particular role, and it's kind of a rare thing that's far away from my reality. um, so that's what is evoked when we talk about that word, when we say shaman. And so it's weird to think about there might be a shaman living next door to me in Melbourne, Australia. um, but so those shamans, like, it feels like there's a long process. Like you're saying, you don't just become a shaman overnight.
Yeah,
How does someone become a shaman?
I mean, oftentimes it's something that is a pre-written. It's something that is written within the soul contracts, and is a person that usually stay awake, and the veil between the conscious and the unconscious is very thin for this person. And so it's a lifelong process that it was pre-written beforehand, and oftentimes in different culture this person would have been recognized Interesting.
Mm.
For example, the classic story of the Dalai Lama. As a master healer, master as a general master, that the story how they found him through the reincarnation of the past lama, and they knew that he's going to come down through the astrological alignment, and how he's going to come down to this specific village. And then
Mm.
when he came down, there was like a whole bunch of ravens or crows behind the village. And then when they brought the items of who he used to be in his previous lives, they brought teeth and glasses and a couple of other items. And the little baby, I think it was 2 or 3 years old or something like that, was recognizing the items. They put the whole items there, and they said, "This is mine. This is mine. This is
Yep.
mine." And that's how they recognized him and
Right.
found, So really, it's all about the mystic realities and tapping into those, the unseen worlds, the magical worlds of existence that we're slowly now in this age we're starting to getting more and more familiar with, as we are um, you know stepping towards that new age of spirituality and consciousness and awareness. Back in the old days, it used to be like much more rare and really hard to find, and
Yeah.
the energies were much thicker, generally speaking, throughout the planet. Like 2,000 years ago, the state of consciousness of most humans were in a completely different state, and people were unable to comprehend things. For example, they're talking about Jesus, right? So it was had this aura all glowing around him all the time, because his state of consciousness were so heightened. We can equivalent his consciousness to quite advanced person right now today, for example. But back then, it would have been he would have been glow to the other people, because their states of consciousness were so low and so not low, just like less advanced,
Heavy.
um,
Mm.
more heavier. Yeah.
And so there's that kind of preordained, like the Dalai Lama story, is so beautiful, but there's a massive, well, it's a good example because we have a little bit of a awareness of that kind of lineage, that there's a whole container, like with the container for the Dalai Lama to come into, of the monasteries and that lineage, and a massive understanding to then kind of, and the past life understanding to then look for and recognize the Dalai Lama. But are there, people who, would that always be the case, say if you're in a village, that someone is born and they're kind of recognized as meant to be a shaman, or people self-recognize and come and go, I know this. This is I have a calling.
Well, I guess it's different in every culture, right? Oftentimes, you'll see a person who is, a shaman. His kids, his family. He will. Oftentimes, they will have a lot of kids and many women as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
to spread the seed, of his genetics throughout the village, because supposedly, it's more advanced. Um, and Oftentimes they will transmute their teachings and their knowledge to their kids and to their immediate
Mm-hmm.
family members. So oftentimes he will recognize through his family or through the people around him who is the one that is gifted or is able to do or having those skills within his genetic makeup, and that will allow him to do
Mm-hmm.
those things. And so then he takes this person on board and help him and support him, and whether it's his son or a cousin or uh, so they have like a couple families, and within the families they will have like um, not hierarchies, but they'll have that wisdom and teachings that that person and recognition that that boy can become a medicine man later, or that girl, she's very great, she has like an amazing capacity to hear spirits. And you can just see it fairly early on when we can see how they're
Mm-hmm.
interacting with the world, with the natural world. And they would recognize that person as as that little girl as shaman, that as someone that can be a shaman later on.
Yeah. And is then there is like an apprenticeship, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, in the old days, I guess they just coming together, and they just either living together. Sometimes it's in a remote place, out in the jungle, in the jungle, ayahuasca style. They would go into the jungle in the old school ways, and be in the jungle. They would go to the old healer, the most advanced one, apprentice there. Mostly they would do the diets, obviously, under the ayahuasca style mystery school. But we're talking about general shamanism as well. It will be not only under that connotation. So it will be like
Mhm.
whether it's in Mongolia, they would go to where the shaman lives. They would stay with them for a year or two. They learn how to do the drumming, how to interact with animals, how to get the messages from spirit, how to get into a trance state. There's different ways of shamanism. So the Mongolian, they work with the drumming and getting into a trance state and getting possessed with
Mhm.
spirit, and getting into that possession when spirit is completely embodied inside of them, and then they're able to bring messages from spirit to the community. So oftentimes those communities, they're so intertwined with the land, with the way the land works, with the because they don't have supermarkets. They didn't have supermarkets to go and get food, so they want to be with harmony with the land. So
Yeah.
they need to know when the herds are
Yep.
going to come back, so they can give the hands. They need to know if the winter is going to be too long. They need to know how, so they're not going to have like illnesses in the with the animals that they're working with the sheep or the goats, or whether it's the South America, it will be the llamas. In the Keros, in the Andes, it's very similar. There would be like harmonizing always the energies with the
Mhm.
land, connecting with those deep energies of the land, which we want to harmonize. We want to bring a state of ayin, a state of reciprocity, when there is giving and receiving all the time. And when there is harmony, the lands will give you back. That's the general notions and
Mhm.
awarenesses that medicine men have. So they see a lack. There's the ability to see lack in the land. There is like too much taking, or there's this harmony that is might,
Mm.
might happen around um, certain actions of people or other communities. And when there's these harmonies, there's less crops, there is potential wars, there's illnesses, there is diseases, there's arguments within the
Mm.
people are less happy. So because the land is not happy, the community won't be happy. And this notion is throughout the whole
Yep.
planet. It's not only just in it's very very common thing. The same in Africa. They have like their deep traditions. They work with the orishas. They work with the different their own archetypes of their spirits of that land. They have their dances. They have their possessions. They have
Yep.
their songs. They have all their methods to bring that alignments back into the community, because the shaman, one of the most important role of the shaman or the healer, the medicine man, is to bring the community together and make sure that the community, that's the responsibility, is to make sure the community will be with alignment with the land, and everyone's going to be healthy and alive and positive. And through the messages of spirit and what's need to be done from the energies of the land as well, uh, the community will thrive and be better.
Yep. I'm
And
just hearing that the relationship. I'm just hearing like the interconnectedness of that relationship with nature that you're describing. I'm just hearing like that the shaman has a relationship with nature and all living things, and their community is a part of that. It's all that interconnectedness that, if it's discord, it's all interconnected. It's with nature and the animals and Mother Earth, and it's reflected in the community, in the people around.
yeah, it's an ecosystem. It's an ecosystem. Everything is working together.
Mm.
So and the people, in more the traditional setting, what we said back in the days, their connection to nature was, they didn't had a disconnection there. Maybe their consciousness weren't like out there so much, but they were like deeply connected, rooted with the earth, because they know there's the basic knowing that the earth is the mother that will give them food. They give them everything they need. If something is, is out of alignment, it's not going to be there. So it's like their basic uh, reverence and honoring of the land. They know that it will bring them what they need to receive back, so they have to give back and honoring and make sure everything is going to be clean and organize the village in a nice aligned way. And that's amazing. And I think now we are,
Mm.
because we're such a disconnected culture, we're starting to, all right, we need to how can we organize the city to harmonize with the environment, when it's such a really disconnected environment. To be in a city, there's barely trees around. um, and we're learning how to harmonize in technology. We have all the technology and the towers, the cellular towers, the things that are against nature, really. They are in dissonance, so we are living in a complete dissonance completely most of our life, because technology is not aligned with nature.
Yeah.
So we're trying to find a way to change the frequencies of those devices that we're working with, and making them align with spirit again, with nature. So that's something that can be done if we're thinking about it, how to align those energies back to the original blueprint of the environment, and then things can flow and go into harmony. And
Yeah, I'm just thinking about Indigenous. What's the difference between, like you say, everyone? We're all Indigenous. We all come from a land and belong to a land. But when we think about Indigenous cultures, um, my mind goes to cultures that have not been overwhelmed by science. They haven't been overwhelmed by technology. You know, and that science hasn't taken over as the authority. Like
mm,
nature remains as the source
yeah,
of authority and truth rather than science.
that's it.
Mm.
And now we have to align science back into to nature. So this is the process that
Yeah, and
we're
it
getting
seems to be
into.
happening, right?
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
process that we're slowly getting into, merging the worlds.
There's another thing you said that I want to pick up on earlier, where you said that with the shamans in Mongolia, they get into an altered states where they're completely possessed by spirit.
Hmm.
And I remember in a ceremony having this image of you actually, where you're like playing the music. You're playing this, you're playing, you're creating the ikaros and the sounds. And the sounds were making something amazing happen to me. And I had this sense that ayahuasca, you're like an instrument to ayahuasca. She's playing you and you're playing the music. And I had this kind of sense of like you being played like an instrument.
Yeah,
That sounds like, like you're like that's like sounds like a kind of possession.
yeah, she's saturating. Yeah, it's a bit different, because I still do have a saying in the process a little bit. But there is a sense of possession and a
Mhm.
line. Part of the art of shamanism is the ability to notice in the space and still, not being too much or being too less, or managing the space in a from the earthly perspective. And when we have the spirit that does what spirit need to do, then you have the person in the middle, the intermediary, that is able to discern and have a look. All right, this is too much energy there. It might be too strong. Maybe we need to calm the energy down. Maybe we need to bring the energy up. Maybe we have to, bring more heart energy. And then through that, the spirit aligns with those aspects inside of what the medicine man is bringing into the space. So it's a symbiosis of
So
spirit. It's a symbiosis of spirit and biology, and noticing what is needed in the space, and then it's like dancing back and forth with who is taking the lead, and letting go and surrendering into that dance of spirit and biology, and body.
So really, like that term bridge between the world, like the shaman is really a bridge between the worlds. Like that's such a classic kind of encapsulation of the shaman bridges the worlds.
That's right. Yeah. So it's through the physical body, right? How we do that? We do
Hmm.
that through the physical body. It's about the embodiment of spirit dwelling within your body, and how you are managing to translate, in a way, translate that otherworldly energies into words, into songs, into dance, into frequencies and energies that will resonate throughout the space and create the healing and the ceremonial space and the ceremonial ground. And yeah, and that's the really uh, the first and biggest difference between a therapist slash facilitator to a shaman, a master healer, maestro, whatever you want to call it. um, that
Hmm.
the maestro has the ability to, what we call, has a sense of dominating the space in terms of make sure that the spaces be completely, energetically speaking, there is awareness for what is happening in the space. There is an awareness for the different energies in the space. There is a full protection that nothing external can come into the space if it's not invited. Very, very important. And maneuvering the energies around the space that will be with harmony with whatever is required, because there is the ability to see the needs of what the space is required, because there is a specific needs behind the scene that is underlying need that is, as a collective, for a group, for example, or as for one person, there is an underlying need that you might need to fulfill. Versus a therapist slash facilitator, um, they do something else. They work as a facilitator, as a, a therapist. You work directly with the person. There's less involvement of otherworldly wisdom and teaching. Obviously, it's depend on the type of therapist you are and um, facilitator, and what is your modality, obviously. But let's say it on the
Yes.
psychotherapy side of things, or something a bit more simple.
Or
Um,
doctor or
or
surgeon or
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, they're not it's more in the three-dimensional realm, right? The therapist is generally working more within the three-dimensional realm and looking at pathology, what is wrong, trying to remove things that is wrong, or trying to work with the three-dimensional presentation of what's happening right now without that
yeah,
spiritual the spiritual realm entering in.
yeah,
Can I ask you, are you up for talking about yourself right now as a shaman?
yeah. I guess so. Oftentimes, I don't feel too comfortable talking about myself, but I'll do it. Let's do it.
Well, are you a shaman?
I guess so. This is something that it's not something that we have to keep like really dear and close to our hearts. To put a label on something is something that is very important for us to do. Um, I don't like to call myself a shaman. I'll be honest. It's not something that I want to put a label on and describe myself like I'm a shaman and all that. I want my persona, my ego. We have to be like really humble with that, because there's a lot of connotation that comes up with that. Um, especially the notion of power and control, and the more you are dwelling into those spaces, the more power you have, the more responsibility you have. And oftentimes we can see
Yeah.
in the world, you know because of misdoing of human behavior, there's a lot of charlatans and people that doing things, and they're calling themselves that, and they're calling themselves that, and then there's a lot of misuse of energies and manipulations and things that I wouldn't want to see in the world, but it's kind of like made the world a little bit murky, and the connotation is a little bit murky around that. I found
Mhm.
oftentimes, the more you're calling yourself, or so I'm a master shaman. It's like, you know, it's not coming together. It's something that you're not calling yourself like that. It's not coming together. The more you're saying, look, I am like that, I am like that, it's you're going away from it, in terms of who you are and what is your
Yeah.
persona, and um, it's I like to call the word ceremonialist. Sometimes maestro is good, but I don't like the labels. Sometimes the labels are something that I'm actually not comfortable with. I'll be honest. It's just because
I can see that.
I prefer to be like, one of the things about this podcast, for example, that if it would be up to me, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
I really wouldn't be here, if it will be up to me. I would prefer to be out in the shadow, quiet, behind the scene, just dwelling and doing my own little thing, be in my comfort zone. Prefer to be, talking with who I need to talk with, connect with my immediate family. But the main thing this thing is happening right now is because I've been given a mission, and this is part of shamanism, right? Because spirit is giving you instructions,
Mhm.
and you have a mission to do in the world. And part of my mission is, to speak up and to share and to express, what is need to be spoken. And that was directly given from the plants, and spirit as well, in order for me to step up and, to be more outspoken and share, the wisdom and the teachings that have been given to me throughout the years of a lot of hard work and a lot of difficulties and, a lot of pain and suffering that I had to sacrifice in order to be where I'm at right now. Because it's not just this amazing, thing that you can do. It's come with a lot of pain and hard work, and challenges, because spirit won't let you to just, slack off for a minute. I mean, there's no slack off. There's eye watching you
Yeah.
24/7. You cannot just like suddenly, let it go and get drunk and, abuse your body or anything like that. You have to be completely aligned and connected and devoted to the path of spirit and listening to whatever needs to happen and continue. And also, there's the contract of what this life, wanted me to do in this life. So I had all these, things that I have to go through in my early 20s and 30s. I have been to the army, the military. I've been, going through a lot of hard, post trauma, and a lot of general difficult life experiences that led me to where I'm at right now. So I had to overcome those wounds and pains and, state of difficulties in order for me to rise and to be able to be here right now. Otherwise, I would be a completely different person. So,
Can you give us a little bit more detail about how that happened? Like, how did you realize that this was your path? How did that come about?
um, well, really, in retrospective, I was never asleep as a young, teenager. I was obsessed with third eyes. I was identified myself as an artist, and I was always dwelling in the arts and creating, drawings and paintings and, clay sculptures and, doing all these artistic things. I was just involved with the arts and connection to the land, and always immersed myself, through, walking in nature a lot. Most of the time, I was just there obsessed with nature, the animals, and all that. So that was the stage of the original innocence, when things were like really beautiful and amazing, up until I went to the army, and then I've been crushed, and the little boy was, destroyed by the warrior, the soldier. And then I emerged as a soldier. But then I went through all these quite intense experiences, uh, which, by the way, throughout the whole process, I was very deeply connected. Yes, the teenager died, and I was rising up as a young warrior soldier. And throughout this whole process, I was just really, the only thing that kept me in a positive mind was, watching nature around me. Every time I was going on missions and stuff like that, I was noticing the birds, I was noticing nature, I was enjoying my environment where I was, and I felt still a very deep connection to where I was. Very strong intuition,
Mhm.
very deeply connected whatever we were doing. And I mean, I'm Israeli, so that's kind of like standard in Israel. It's not that unusual, really. And
How
later
old were you
on,
when you went into military service? How old were you in that?
18 years old, 18
Mhm.
to 21 is the 3 years compulsory service. Um,
Yeah.
and we've done a lot of proper. It's a professional military, right? So it's like you're doing what you need to do in the most professional way. Training for almost 2 years, a lot of military actions, like what most people would see in movies, pretty much. Um,
You were right involved with full-on military action?
yeah, I was in the paratroopers, and I volunteered within the paratroopers. I volunteered to go to another unit within that. It's like a frontline rangers kind of style unit, and it was very intense time back then, early 2000s. And it was just a lot of just war, pretty much. You know, suicide
Mm.
bombers and stuff like
I
that.
can't I can't imagine. Yeah.
A lot of suicide bombing and a thing, and we were involved in a lot of arrests and um, you know stopping terrorist attacks and stuff like that. And yeah, I lost one of my best friend, died in one of the combats that we were involved with, and that was one of the things that really. I was also a medic, by the way. Um,
Mhm.
uh, Military medic is a bit different than the normal medic, but um, so that was the thing that really broke me back then. And yeah, it was one of the things that started the really PTSD thing going on. And you finish the service, you've been conditioned to this really intense, specific type of programming, so your mind is so tuned to work in a specific way. So it's like you can't walk on the streets properly because you're always looking if someone is going to shoot at you. Uh, Never
Right.
felt comfortable to be inside houses in the middle of the night, and the court curtains are on and the lights. So I have to close everything to feel more comfortable. Stuff like
Mm.
that. Just and then it's becoming worse and worse as time went by. And I figured that I'm not that great around age 22, 3 or something like that, 23. And then I went travel for almost 2 years. I traveled most of the time by myself. I didn't have money. Um, and I did the cliche thing, I went to the Himalayas to where actually the Tibetan exiles are resides in the Ramsala area, and I went up to the mountains, and I was really determined. I had this thing in me that I thought back then that I want to feel spirit, but I thought that I don't feel it, but I felt it the whole time, and
Mhm.
I was like, I was getting into a meditative state, and I did actually a gentle Reiki course, just a 3 day thing, and I was really determined to feel the energy. And I said, I'm calling it in, I'm calling it in, I'm calling it in, I'm calling it in. And then I invoked the Kundalini experience inside of myself. And I had a full, the whole Kundalini comes up and the whole body is starting to shake, and a lot of visions. A very deep meditative state in the mind is all very, very meditative. And I was possessed by spirit for days and days and days.
Wow.
Way after the course stopped, just in the Himalayas, the energies of that specific place, obviously it being chosen for a good reason, visiting all the temples there, and obviously I had the first spiritual awakening to the true glorious of spirit and the power of spirit and what spirit is. I just was possessed with it for days and days and days. And then I made a pact, and then I made a pact with spirit when it happened to me, and I told to myself um, that I will find the most powerful thing that I can offer in order for me to serve humanity. I will do whatever it takes, and I will find the most powerful thing to heal humanity and to fix this planet up after all this pain and suffering that I've been going through as a young 20-year-old guy. And that pact is something that I made that pact then and there, but it was actually a memory that came back later on. I recognized it as a memory of my own personal soul contract thing. So what happened later is actually quite interesting, because I came back to Israel after almost 2 years of traveling throughout the whole world. I know the whole world, but traveling around. And 2 months later, I found myself. There was another war coming in, and it was the second Lebanon war in 2006, and I found myself after traveling in a very heightened state of awareness. Um, I found myself in the middle of a massive war in Lebanon, marching in the middle of the night and getting into the unknown. And um, they calling me in after you get a call. There's an emergency service. Potentially, I could say no, I'm not going to go, but you have that really deep brother and camaraderie with your military team members, and we said, yeah, we're just going in. It has to be done. There's missile dropping on your home. Just constantly sirens and missile dropping everywhere. Just have to go.
Wow.
And then I marched in that state of heightened awareness after a major Kundalini experience into middle of Lebanon, and that was
Wow.
amazing, and that was incredible, and that was really, really incredible, because I I knew not fear, because I knew spirit is with me all the time. And I just walked in there, and the intuition was just like on steroids, what you call. And yeah, we had an amazing experiences there in terms of like how everything was unfolding, and the interconnectedness of that I had just naturally. I knew I'm going to be safe, and I won't, nothing's going to happen. I knew I'm going to be safe. I'm tuned to my intuition. I'm in a flow state all the time. It's fine. And so it was. And after that, I said, that's it. I'm probably will have to leave that country because that's probably way too much, and I'm not gonna grow my kids like that. Um, and that's how it started.
And what happened next? So you left Israel. How, what happened next? Where did you go from there?
I
I
traveled to
mean, I'm just
Australia.
before you do that,
Yeah,
you know, I'm just like so moved hearing that.
yeah,
I just want to say that.
yeah, yeah. So it's a lot of life and death kind of like stories
Yeah.
that led me to where I'm at, because I've seen the other side through a lot of death and misery and pain. And this is like celebrating life. Every moment we're trying to celebrate life and why we are here and what we're doing, why we're doing, right?
And that you can be interconnected.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can be connected in the midst of that. Like, we're so black and white in our Western thinking of like, you can't be connected to spirit in the middle of a war, and yet everything's connected all the time. So I can't really fathom, but I get a sense of when you talk about, I can feel it when you're talking about keeping that interconnectedness, keeping that connection to spirit whilst in like unfathomable violence surroundings. I mean,
yeah.
I can't imagine. Can't imagine. So, what led you to Australia from there?
I was traveling in Australia beforehand, 2004, and I really liked the place, and I thought that will be a good place to live in. And then I came to Australia and I studied. I came as a student and I studied counseling, transpersonal counseling, for about a year and a half as a young student. And then I did shiatsu and oriental therapies as a body worker. So learning about Chinese medicine as well. And the counseling was quite amazing as well, because it was all interconnected and teaching a lot about shamanism as well, and different psychotherapy modalities, and that was really great too. And then I met my current partner, and since then I'm here.
And how did you come to drink ayahuasca?
Well, it was just obviously just a random thing that happened just by itself without too much effort.
Obviously.
Someone said, "Are you want to come to a ceremony?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I'm up for that." And I think it was 2008, early 2008, and yeah, I had my first drink, and that was enough to remember what I needed to remember. So it was pretty much first drink was just like a fish in the water. It was just really, really just like
Yeah.
a direct memories and just being in the water. And it was just came to me straight away. I just knew straight away what thing. Did it mean that I became a shaman straight away and working in the medicine straight away? It took me like around
Mhm.
5 to 6 years, maybe longer, and a couple hundred ceremonies and a lot of hard work. And that's how it started.
Well,
But yeah,
I'm
there's a
going to
lot of
take a bit of
couple.
pressure off you
There's a
for
lot
a
of
minute. I'll put some pressure on you again in a sec, but I'll take some pressure off and give you a breather. That's like, whoo, a lot. I was watching a documentary um, the other day, and was about a temple of light in Peru, and Gabor Mate was taking a bunch of therapists over he was, taking a bunch of different therapists, nurses, psychotherapists, doctors, uh, psychologists, psychiatrists, um, to drink ayahuasca at what looked like a very beautiful center in Peru. And they were saying that the shamans, the curanderos, were expecting these healers who were coming to be healed. And they were shocked to see that all these people were the most traumatized people, because in their tradition, the curanderos, the shamans, the healers, the maestros, have to undergo their own healing process to become healers. Whereas here were these therapists that hadn't been doing their own healing work. And I just want to bring this thread in to kind of a difference between the Western world kind of therapeutic, view, and the shamanic path of you have to be doing your own work, right? And that's what I'm really feeling when you're telling your story, that your own healing is so is unavoidable. You have to be doing that to come towards offering medicine or healing as in those shamanic ways to anyone else. And it's a rigorous process.
Yeah, it's I mean, you can be, therapists, they can do good things. They can do a lot of, there's good intentions out there. And that's amazing. Um, but even though that as a therapist, I do think that it will be important for you to do that as a person, because oftentimes you'll have the reflections that you get from other clients and stuff like that that will trigger you. And I do think that I mean, most people need to do that healing anyway, especially and more so if you are offering healing for other people. That's supposed to be a standard.
It should be a standard, but it isn't.
Yeah, more so on a shamanic perspective. You won't be a light shaman, so called, or you're gonna be like a dark one if you wouldn't do so, because your motives, your inner motives will be different if you haven't done your inner work about yourself. Inside yourself, your inner motives will be corrupted because your wounds and your pains are haven't been worked properly. And that's why we see issues in the world, even if the
Yeah.
intention is good, supposedly behind the scene, the inner landscape is not aligned if you haven't worked out your issues inside yourself. And then that will play out throughout the space and throughout your life. And when you bring the therapies into space, really, that will be in most therapeutic fields, really. um, but it's becoming more crucial in the shamanic perspective, and then you're becoming like more of a unconscious dark sorcerer when you are kind of like manipulating people unconsciously in the space. And you know, maybe even consciously it's even worse. But that's what happens, when the ego, the persona, is not aligned, and the notion of powers and force are not aligned with each other. So you, especially with ayahuasca, she will often bring that trigger, that that thing inside of yourself, that craving to having more power, uh, f- to feed the persona rather, and to be able to manipulate and do different things like that. That's the dark side of it, that can manipulate and do things, and that's what we call
Yeah.
the
It's the
sorcery
shadow.
and
It's shadow
the
work.
shadow aspect. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but when you talk about it, and also, what I've seen with other documentaries and different people talking about that the rigor of that connection to spirit, where y- you're going to suffer if you're off track. Like, it will be for you, like you're saying, you cannot deviate. Like, if you kind of do something that is out of integrity, you're going to feel it straight away, because of that contract and that connection to spirit, who's going to, like, give you a consequence, like you'll feel the consequences.
You'll have a consequence, that's for sure.
So, right?
Yeah, yeah, you're gonna get slapped in the your life is gonna fall apart.
The way you talk, I think you have just a foreboding, like there's a real knowing that if I do this, that's not going to be good, and that's that deep connection of like really being attuned, right? Of knowing that, how I'm feeling it in my own body is a sick feeling at the thought of doing something that is ultimately harmful, whether it's something simple like having a beer. But when you're so attuned, that's going to be disturbing.
Yeah, so yeah, basically, if you don't, there is this thing that you just see and observe in other people as well when they don't listen and they don't do like specific things and they haven't listened to the message from spirit. And then, you know, I had a person who came and, um, for example, just an example of a lady that came in and, I said, you're not going to alcohol, just don't go to alcohol. Don't drink alcohol at least minimum 2 weeks after ceremonies. And it's not going to be great. And she found herself in the pub doing what she used to do beforehand. And she don't remember anything. She got drunk, she got abusive, and uh, she didn't remember anything. And usually when you don't remember anything, there is a sense of type of possession that happens from an external energies that come into the space. And then she had like 2 3 weeks of horrible um this horrible experience. Like her life were like went pretty pear-shaped like pretty quick afterwards. And
Mm.
she had
Mhm.
to go through that process. Really, she had to go through that process to see, yeah, I fucked up. This is like pretty bad and I shouldn't have done that. And now I can actually see properly how all that process is really really bad for me. And since then she actually stopped drinking altogether. um, so this is just like
Mhm.
one small example.
Yeah. What's the difference between shaman, curandero, and maestro?
I mean, curandero is a healer. It's the loose translation. Maestro have the ability to teach. He's a healer that is
Mhm.
becoming a teacher. Is like the next level. You're becoming a teacher of those arts of the. You raise yourself to the next level when you're becoming a maestro. You are able to teach. You are able to share. You are able to um, not only heal people and work with people. You're able to teach other healers how to do that. So it's the next level of
Mhm.
your evolution.
And when you're talking about humility, and I think we spoke, yeah, that humility is a very, like, it is humbling to be connected to spirit, and that I think that's I've also seen in documentaries and things that I've watched. When you're watching shamans and maestros, you can see that there was one this beautiful documentary. Actually, it was a curandera about this woman who came from Peru and left and had a very painful life, and tried to get as far away as possible, and then felt the calling and came back and became apprentice to this shaman, and her process of what she had to go through because she heard that calling. And there was a scene in this beautiful little documentary where she was just thanking, in tears, thanking the shaman, her teacher, and just she was like overflowing with gratitude. And I could see him, he couldn't, he was listening, but he wasn't taking it,
Mm.
like it was her gratitude, but he wasn't taking it. He wasn't filling himself up with it, just the humility, you know what I mean? And I've seen that humility of like, it's kind of not me. It's not, I'm not owning that. I'm not taking that. It's not, it's like that we all love to be appreciated, and we all love, we kind of take the you have to be good at receiving compliments, and we want to receive good stuff, and we want to feel good about ourselves. But I see that humility really sh- visible with you when someone tries to thank you, and it's like no, I don't want to fill myself up. That's not there, the desire or the inclination to kind of be puffed up in any way, you know.
Because one of the main one of the main things here, that my role is to help you to find your power within yourself. I'm just a mirror, I'm just a reflection,
Mm.
right? So that's the main thing. So it's all about empowering other people, to give them their power and to show them who they are internally between themselves. And that's the essence of healing, really. Most healing, that's what healing is. One of the most powerful thing. You have to go through your own journey. I'm not
Mm.
there, to make you feel comfortable. I'm not there to hold you back and cuddle you, and like what a lot of people expecting, to be held and nourished and all that. So the shaman is just a mirror to yourself. Is the person that helps you to find the power within yourself. Is the person that helps you to reflect. I'm not here to cuddle you, to hold you, to fluff you around. I'm here to poke you. I'm here to show you who you are. I'm here to take you to the uncomfortable spaces within yourself, in order for you to overcome that. And this is like one of the another big difference between a therapist and a shaman. Shaman is not here to hold you and cuddle you and do all these things. It's just like a pure mirror. If you don't like the mirror, that's another story, but you'll have to
Mhm.
work that out eventually, and to find that part within yourself, until you realize what is happening there. So it's uncomfortable work. It's not for the
Mm.
faint-hearted, but you have to go deep into those places, and that's the real work. That's the way it is. Um, oftentimes in the
Yeah.
stories of Don Juan from Carlos Castaneda, the sorcerer, the master sorcerer from the Acuy tribe in Mexico, he's amazing, and he's just reflecting constantly to this highly rational, anthropologist student, and constantly reflecting back at him and just give him an answer that he cannot compute inside his head. He's not there to hold him and teach him. He's just looking at him. You're either going to get it or not, but I'm going to take you through a road that you're not going to be familiar with, and you'll have to let
Mm.
go of all these things that you think that you need to do. Whatever your belief systems are, whatever your values are, you have to change everything that you think, and you have to step through the gates of the unknown, through the gates of fire, through the initiation into the mystical realms of pain and suffering, and tapping into the magic, and then eventually you can rise up into the hearty space, and then when the really high frequencies are uh, really settling in, when the shadow and the lower aspects of yourself are properly processed, and only then the heart space and the higher mind will be fully aligned within your system.
So, just to summarize, I think there are a few crossovers between shaman and therapist, depending, of course. I mean, the variety and range of different types of therapists there are out there. It's so varied, like a bit more hand holding, a bit more, being a good parent to someone. So often, like a therapist is like a surrogate parent, and they're there to be that role and to create a safe container. Um, Oftentimes there is like a view of pathology and wanting to like the therapist can be an authority, where a therapist might be kind of diagnosing and being a sort of authority outside of the person, and much more of that hand holding, making you comfortable. But I also hope a good therapist and therapists in the West don't have to do their own healing work.
While therapists, they're there to help you out in a very specific way. obviously it depends on the modality and what it is. It will be fairly on a 3D space. They would like to make you feel better and be better, but not with full alignment with spirit.
Mhm. I really want to thank you today, Michael. I was very, very touched by hearing some. I know there's so much more that you could have shared today, but what you did share was very, very powerful and moving, and maybe not so comfortable, but I really appreciate you sharing that with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. I really appreciate it holding space for me to share while I'm uncomfortable sharing what I need to share. But I made it, and thank you for everyone to listen. I really appreciate your listening ears and hearing my story, and I hope you get a lot out of it. Thanks a lot, guys.
And hopefully, we'll hear more of your personal stories because they're amazing. And next time, we're going to talk about dieta. You've mentioned it a few times. I'm going to go a little bit more in depth about what is dieta, what does that mean, how do you do a dieta. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please support the channel, like, subscribe, share, give us your comments. We really love hearing your feedback and ideas you might have, questions you might have. Links to Michael in the notes, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.